California is broken. Or at least that's what everyone keeps saying while they're paying $3,500 a month to live in a shoebox next to a freeway that sounds like a jet engine having a midlife crisis. But here's the part nobody tells you. There are entire towns, real places, with houses, forests, rivers, and actual human beings where you can still retire without selling a kidney on the black market. Places where the air smells like redwood and rain instead of car exhaust and regret. Places so quiet, you'll start hearing your own thoughts again, which is either peaceful or terrifying depending on your personality. We're talking about Northern California, the part the brochures accidentally forget. Humboldt, Mendocino, Shasta, the land of fog, mystery, and suspiciously affordable real estate. But be careful, because some of these towns aren't just hidden, they're isolated. Beautiful, yes, peaceful, sure, but also the kind of places where Amazon Prime gives up on you. And trust me, you are not ready for number 1. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's count down the retirement havens nobody's talking about. Number 10. Rio Dell. Tucked away in Humboldt County, like a town that accidentally slipped through the cracks of time, Rio Dell is where California quietly lowers its voice. No glitz, no glam, just a sleepy little pocket along the Eel River where life moves at the speed of a Sunday afternoon that never quite ends. Let's talk numbers, because this is where things start to feel suspiciously reasonable. Median home prices here hover around the low 300,000s, sometimes dipping even lower if the house has personality, which is realtor code for you're going to become very familiar with YouTube repair tutorials. Rent, you're looking at roughly $900 to $1,200 a month in California. Yes, that's real. Crime rates sit slightly above the national average in some categories, but we're not talking chaos, more like petty stuff and the occasional small-town drama that somehow involves everyone. Now here's the thing about Rio Dell. It's quiet. Not peaceful countryside retreat quiet, I mean quiet. The kind where you walk outside at night and hear absolutely nothing, except maybe the river in the distance and your own internal monologue getting louder than you'd prefer. This town doesn't entertain you. It doesn't try to impress you. It just exists, like a cat that tolerates your presence but will never love you back. But that's exactly why some retirees are choosing it. You're about 30 minutes from Eureka, which means access to hospitals, groceries, and actual civilization when needed. The rest of the time, you've got nature, space, and the kind of solitude people in big cities fantasize about while stuck in traffic. And if you dig around online, you'll find locals saying things like, Rio Dell is what happens when you stop trying to keep up with the world and realize you don't need to. Which sounds poetic, until you realize it also means the nearest decent takeout might be a strategic life decision. Picture this, you're standing on a small wooden porch, coffee in hand, early morning fog drifting lazily through the trees. The Eel River hums quietly in the background. No sirens, no crowds, just stillness, the kind you can almost hear. Number 9. Laytonville. Laytonville isn't just a town, it's a personality test. Sitting quietly in Mendocino County along Highway 101, this place feels like the opening scene of a movie where you're not entirely sure if it's going to be heartwarming or slightly unsettling. Population? Barely over 1,000. Traffic lights? Don't get greedy. This is the kind of town where if 2 cars stop at the same time, it becomes a social event. Now let's get into the numbers, because Laytonville is one of those places that makes retirees do a double take. Median home prices float around the mid-$300,000, sometimes less if you're willing to go a little off-grid, which here is less of a lifestyle choice and more of a community tradition. Rent is rare, but typically lands between $800 and $1,200 when you can find it. Crime rates? Surprisingly low overall, though like many rural areas, it leans more toward you forgot to lock your shed than anything dramatic. But here's where Laytonville gets interesting. This town has a reputation, not a bad one, just a distinct one. It's a mix of retirees, longtime locals, and people who very clearly moved here to disappear from something, or someone, or just the general chaos of modern life. There's a strong off-grid culture, solar panels popping up like mushrooms after rain, and a general vibe of, we're good out here, thanks. Healthcare is the trade-off. You're looking at about an hour's drive to larger facilities in Ukiah, which means this isn't the place for someone who wants a hospital 5 minutes away. But for independent retirees who value space over convenience, that's part of the deal. Spend 5 minutes scrolling forums or local discussions, and you'll see comments like, Laytonville isn't for everyone, and that's exactly the point. Translation, if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you'll probably leave within 6 months, wondering why your neighbor built a greenhouse out of old windows and refuses to explain it. And let's be honest, this town doesn't care if you stay or go. It's been doing its thing long before you arrived. Picture this. The sun is setting behind rolling green hills, casting long shadows across a quiet stretch of land. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once, then nothing. You're sitting outside, no traffic, no noise, just a sky slowly filling with stars so bright it feels almost unreal. And if you think Laytonville marches to its own beat, just wait until you hear what's lurking in the next town. Number 8. Willow Creek. Welcome to Willow Creek, where the forests are thick, the rivers run cold, and the local celebrity is a creature that may or may not exist. Yes, this is Bigfoot country. Tucked deep in Trinity County, Willow Creek leans all the way into its reputation as the Bigfoot capital of the world. And no, that's not a joke, it's a full-on identity. There are statues, signs, festivals, and just enough mystery in the surrounding wilderness to make you side-eye the tree line a little longer than usual. Now, beyond the hairy folklore, let's talk real life. Median home prices here sit around the low to mid $300,000, sometimes dipping lower if you're okay with a place that's seen a few decades, or a few mysterious footprints. Rent is limited, but generally falls between $800 and $1,100. Crime rates are below the national average, mostly because there just aren't that many people around to commit crimes in the first place. But here's the trade-off, and it's a big one. Willow Creek is remote. Like, did my phone just give up on life? Remote. You're about 45 minutes to an hour from larger towns like Arcata, where you'll find hospitals, bigger grocery stores, and the kind of services most people take for granted. Out here, errands become day trips. Amazon deliveries? Let's just say patience becomes a personality trait. And yet, retirees keep showing up. Why? Because if you're the kind of person who finds peace in nature, not just visiting it, but actually living inside it, this place is hard to beat. Fishing, hiking, kayaking, or just sitting quietly while the Trinity River does its thing. There's no rush here, no pressure, just a slow, steady rhythm that doesn't care about your previous life in the city. Online, you'll find locals casually saying things like, you don't move to Willow Creek unless you're okay with being alone with your thoughts, and possibly Bigfoot. And honestly, that's probably the most accurate sales pitch they could give. This isn't retirement with golf courses and brunch spots. This is retirement where your closest neighbor might be a mile away, and your biggest daily decision is whether to explore the woods or just listen to them. Picture this. You're standing at the edge of the Trinity River early in the morning. Mist hovers just above the water, drifting slowly as the sun begins to break through towering trees. The forest is silent, almost too silent. You take a breath, and for a second, you could swear something moved in the distance. And if you think Willow Creek is a little strange, the next place leans into a completely different kind of mystery. Number 7. Garberville. Garberville is what happens when a retirement town and a former outlaw economy decide to shake hands and just never fully explain what happened next. Sitting in Humboldt County along Highway 101, this place is the unofficial gateway to the Lost Coast, a stretch of California so rugged and untouched it feels like the state just gave up paving it. Towering redwoods surround everything, sunlight barely makes it to the ground, and the air smells like earth, rain, and history that doesn't quite want to be talked about. Now let's break it down. Median home prices here usually land in the mid $300,000 to low $400,000, still a bargain by California standards, especially considering the scenery looks like a nature documentary. Rent hovers around $1,000 to $1,400 a month. Crime rates? Slightly above national averages in certain areas, but it's less dangerous city and more small-town unpredictability with a colorful past. Because here's the thing. Garberville used to be deeply tied to California's cannabis boom, and while things have calmed down a lot, that independent, slightly rebellious energy never really left. It's still a place where people value privacy, mind their business, and don't ask too many questions unless absolutely necessary. For retirees, that translates into something oddly appealing: freedom. You're not dealing with HOA committees measuring your grass height. Nobody cares what color you paint your house. Want to live quietly, grow a garden, and disappear into the trees? Congratulations, you'll fit right in. Healthcare is decent for a town this size, with clinics nearby and larger hospitals within an hour or so. Not perfect, but manageable. And for many retirees here, the trade-off is worth it. Spend any time reading what people say online, and you'll see comments like, "Garberville is peaceful as long as you respect the fact that everyone here has their own story," which is a polite way of saying, this town has layers, lots of them. But beneath that edge is something undeniably beautiful. The redwoods don't just surround you, they swallow you. The kind of environment where your problems start to feel smaller simply because the trees are so absurdly large. Picture this, you're walking a quiet trail just outside town, redwoods stretching hundreds of feet above you like ancient pillars, light filters down in soft green beams, the ground damp beneath your feet. Somewhere far off, you hear a branch snap, but you don't see anything, just forest, endless, watchful forest. And if you think Garberville has a past, the next town feels like it's been frozen in one. Number 6. Boerne. Boerne is the kind of place that doesn't try to impress you, and somehow ends up doing exactly that. Sitting in Shasta County, this town feels like Northern California decided to take a deep breath and never exhale. It's quiet, clean, and surrounded by some of the most underrated nature in the entire state. And yet, somehow it never makes the glossy retirement brochures. Probably because Boerne doesn't care about brochures. Let's talk numbers. Median home prices here usually hover in the high 200,000s to low 300,000s. Yes, still California. Rent typically ranges from $900 to $1,300 a month. Crime rates are generally around or slightly below national averages, making it one of the more stable and predictable towns on this list. No major drama, no wild reputation, just steady, low-key living. Now here's where Boerne quietly flexes. Unlike some of the more remote spots we've talked about, Boerne actually has stuff. Grocery stores, basic healthcare facilities, schools, and enough infrastructure that you don't feel like you've completely unplugged from civilization. And if you need more, Redding is about an hour away. Close enough for convenience, far enough to keep the chaos at arm's length. But let's be honest, no one moves to Boerne for the shopping. They move here for Boerne Falls, a place so ridiculously beautiful that even President Theodore Roosevelt once called it one of the natural wonders of the world. Water pours out of volcanic rock like the earth itself forgot how gravity works, cascading into a pool so clear it looks edited. And the best part? It's basically in your backyard. The lifestyle here is simple. You wake up, maybe take a walk, maybe go fishing, maybe just sit outside and watch absolutely nothing happen. And somehow, that becomes enough. Online, locals tend to say things like, "Boerne isn't exciting, and that's exactly why we're here." Which sounds boring until you realize not exciting also means no stress, no crowds, no nonsense. Of course, it's not perfect. Winters can be cold, summers can get dry, and if you're the type who needs constant entertainment, Bernie will stare at you blankly like you just asked it to be something it's not. Picture this. You're standing near Bernie Falls early in the morning, the roar of water echoing through the trees. Mist rises into the cool air, catching sunlight in a way that feels almost unreal. You take a deep breath, and for a moment, everything feels still. And if you think Bernie has balance, the next place feels like stepping straight into another century.
Number 5. Weaverville. Weaverville feels like a town that politely declined to participate in the 21st century and somehow got away with it. Tucked into Trinity County, this former gold rush hub still carries itself like it's waiting for prospectors to walk back into town any minute. The streets are lined with historic buildings, the pace is unhurried to the point of suspicion, and there's a quiet sense that time here isn't measured in minutes, it's measured in stories. Now, let's break down the numbers. Median home prices typically sit in the mid-$300,000, sometimes creeping higher depending on how historic your house is, which usually means charm, character, and at least one thing that will randomly stop working. Rent ranges from about $1,000 to $1,400 a month. Crime rates are generally below national averages, making Weaverville one of the safer, more stable options on this list. But here's what makes this place different. It has soul. Unlike some tiny towns that feel like they're fading away, Weaverville feels preserved. There are local shops, small restaurants, community events, and just enough activity to keep things interesting without ever tipping into chaos. It's the kind of place where people know each other, not in a nosy way, but in a we've all been here long enough to matter kind of way. Healthcare access is better than you'd expect for a town this size, with a local hospital and additional services within driving distance. It's not big city convenience, but it's far from the isolation you see in other rural spots. And retirees, they love it, because Weaverville offers something rare, a balance between quiet and connection. You can disappear into nature when you want, but you're never completely cut off. There's a rhythm here, slow, steady, reliable, that feels almost intentional. Scroll through online discussions and you'll see comments like, "Weaverville feels like a place where people actually live, not just pass through," which is a subtle but important distinction. This isn't a pit stop, it's a destination for people who are done rushing. Of course, it's not perfect. If you're looking for nightlife, you're going to be very disappointed. If you need constant stimulation, this town will gently but firmly suggest you reconsider your life choices. But if you're ready to trade noise for stillness, speed for simplicity, and stress for something that feels a little more grounded, Weaverville starts to make a lot of sense. Picture this. You're walking down a quiet main street in the early evening. Old storefronts glow softly under warm lights, a faint breeze carries the scent of pine, and somewhere nearby you hear laughter from a small local cafe. The world feels slower here, and for once, that doesn't feel like a bad thing. And if you think Weaverville feels like stepping back in time, the next place throws you straight to the edge of the continent.
Number 4. Crescent City. Crescent City feels like the edge of the world, because it kind of is. Perched right along the far northern California coast, just a few miles from Oregon, this town stares directly into the Pacific Ocean like it's waiting for something to come out of it. And judging by its history, sometimes things do. Let's start with the numbers. Median home prices here usually land in the mid-$300,000, occasionally higher if you're chasing those ocean views that look like they belong on a postcard. Rent typically runs between $1,100 and $1,500 a month. Crime rates hover around or slightly above national averages in some categories, but nothing that screams run for your life. More like lock your car and don't leave your bike outside forever. Now here's the twist. This is coastal California, and it's still affordable. That alone should make you suspicious. But the reason is simple. Crescent City comes with personality, strong personality,
the kind that includes heavy fog rolling in like it owns the place, long gray stretches where the sun feels like a rumor, and a history of tsunamis that locals talk about with a casualness that's both impressive and slightly unsettling. Yes, tsunamis. The town was significantly impacted in 1964, and while modern warning systems are in place, it's still part of the identity here. It's like living next to a very beautiful, slightly unpredictable neighbor that you respect, but never fully trust. And yet, people retire here anyway, because when Crescent City is good, it's ridiculously good. You've got dramatic ocean views, rugged cliffs, and some of the most untouched coastline in the state, the kind of scenery that makes you stop mid-sentence just to stare at it. Plus, healthcare access is better than you'd expect, with a local hospital and essential services right in town, something that gives it a major advantage over more remote inland spots. Online, locals often say things like, "You don't live in Crescent City, you adapt to it," which sounds dramatic until you've experienced a week of fog so thick it feels like the sky just gave up. But for the right retiree, the kind who values solitude, raw beauty, and doesn't mind wearing a jacket in July, this place can feel like a hidden treasure. It's not polished, it's not trendy, but it's real. Picture this. You're standing on a rugged shoreline, waves crashing violently against dark rocks as seabirds circle overhead. The air is cold, salty, alive. A lighthouse stands in the distance, half shrouded in fog. You pull your jacket tighter, not because you're uncomfortable, but because it feels right. And if you think Crescent City is dramatic, the next place softens things up, but not in the way you'd expect. Number 3. Fort Bragg. Fort Bragg is what happens when a rough-around-the-edges coastal town decides to clean itself up, but keeps just enough attitude to stay interesting. Sitting along the Mendocino coast, this place has quietly transformed from a working-class logging town into something that feels almost curated, but not in an annoying, overpriced, influencer-infested way. It's still real, just slightly polished. Let's talk numbers, because Fort Bragg plays a different game than the towns we've seen so far. Median home prices typically land between $450,000 and $600,000. Yeah, it's higher, but for coastal California, that's practically a clearance sale. Rent usually runs from $1,400 to $2,000 a month. Crime rates are around the national average, sometimes a bit above in certain categories, but nothing that overshadows the overall livability. And here's the key difference. Fort Bragg has infrastructure. We're talking a proper hospital, reliable grocery stores, decent restaurants, and the kind of amenities that make retirement feel less like a survival challenge and more like, well, retirement. You're not constantly planning trips to another town just to get basic things done. But what really sells this place is the vibe. Fort Bragg sits right on a stretch of coastline that feels both wild and oddly welcoming. You've got Glass Beach, yes, an actual beach covered in smooth, colorful sea glass that looks like the ocean decided to start recycling. You've got coastal trails, art galleries, and just enough activity to keep things from feeling stagnant. It's the kind of town where you can be as social or as invisible as you want, and retirees are catching on. Because while places like Mendocino, just down the road, get all the attention and sky-high prices, Fort Bragg sits there quietly offering a more grounded, more affordable version of the same coastal magic. Online, people often say things like, "Fort Bragg gives you the coast without the ego," which might be the most accurate description possible. It's not trying to impress you, and that's exactly why it works. Of course, it's not perfect. The weather leans cool and foggy. The ocean is beautiful, but not exactly jump in for a swim friendly, unless you enjoy hypothermia as a hobby. And like any coastal town, things can feel a little slow in the off-season. But for many retirees, that's the point. Picture this. You're walking along a wind-swept coastal path, waves rolling in endlessly as the horizon stretches out in front of you. The air is crisp, the sky is a mix of blue and gray, and the only sound is the ocean doing what it's always done. No rush, no pressure, just space to exist. And if you think Fort Bragg has balance, The next place might just mess with your sense of reality a little. Number 2, Mount Shasta City. Mount Shasta City is like living inside a postcard that occasionally whispers strange things to you. Nestled in Siskiyou County at the foot of the majestic Mount Shasta, this town is the kind of place that makes people feel both awe-inspired and slightly unsettled. Crystal clear air, towering peaks, endless forests, and a spiritual energy that locals casually shrug off, but newcomers can't stop noticing. Yes, there are people here who genuinely believe the mountain is, let's say, sentient. And no, they're not necessarily joking. Numbers first, median home prices hover around $350,000 to $450,000, which for a town with these views is practically a steal. Rent ranges from $1,000 to $1,600 per month, depending on how close you want to be to downtown or the mountain. Crime is generally low, this is small-town America, but with a dash of weird energy that keeps things interesting. What makes Mount Shasta City a retiree magnet isn't just the scenery, it's the lifestyle. Hiking, skiing, meditation retreats, and spiritual workshops are all part of the local rhythm. Want solitude? It's everywhere. Want community? Locals will quietly include you if you can keep up with their slightly unconventional vibe. Healthcare is decent for a town this size, with clinics and a small hospital nearby. Not perfect, but certainly manageable. The trade-off? You live somewhere that feels alive in ways you didn't know a town could feel alive. Reddit and forums are full of lines like, "Mount Shasta isn't just a place you live, it's a place that lives with you." Translation, it's magical, grounding, and slightly cult-adjacent, but in a very Northern California way. Picture this. You're sipping coffee on a balcony as dawn breaks, the mountain glowing pink and gold in the distance. Pine scents drift through the air, birds call, wind whispers through trees, and somewhere a creek gurgles like it's laughing quietly at you. You breathe, and for a moment, everything else stops mattering. And if you think Mount Shasta City is enchanting, brace yourself. Number 1 has a gritty, historic charm that will hook you in ways you didn't see coming.
Number 1, Eureka. Ah, Eureka, the crown jewel of Northern California retirement, if your idea of charm involves Victorian architecture, salty coastal air, and just a hint of delightful chaos. This Humboldt County town is the largest on our list, which means it actually has stuff: hospitals, grocery stores, coffee shops that remember your name, and streets where you can actually find a parking spot without strategizing like it's a heist. Median home prices sit around $350,000 to $450,000, still affordable by California standards, especially if you're coming from the South. Rent ranges from $1,100 to $1,800 a month. Crime rates are slightly above the national average, but here, crime usually involves a stolen bicycle or a spirited argument at the farmer's market, not an action movie chase scene. But let's be honest, what makes Eureka the ultimate hidden retirement haven isn't the numbers, it's the vibe. This town oozes character. The streets are lined with colorful Victorians that survived fires, earthquakes, and the occasional storm surge like they had a personal vendetta against decay. The waterfront hums quietly with the energy of ships and seabirds. Local cafes smell of freshly roasted coffee and slightly overzealous cinnamon buns. Retirees here get the best of both worlds: coastal beauty without the sky-high prices, infrastructure without the overbearing crowd, and community without the forced touristy experience. The locals tend to joke on Reddit, "Eureka is like that quirky uncle who shows up at every family event. You don't understand him, but life would be dull without him." Perfect description. Sure, the weather is foggy and damp sometimes, the ocean is moody, and the occasional homeless encampment reminds you that California isn't perfect anywhere. But the balance is intoxicating, gritty yet beautiful, vibrant yet relaxed. Picture this. You're walking along the waterfront as gulls wheel overhead, the ocean stretching endlessly. The air smells like salt and pine, faintly mixed with the scent of coffee from a nearby cafe. A Victorian house with peeling turquoise paint leans just a little to the left, like it knows something you don't. Life slows, curiosity stirs, and for a moment, you realize you've found somewhere that actually feels like home. And that's why Eureka sits at the top of our list. It's more than a retirement town, it's an experience you can live in, breathe in, and never quite leave behind. So there you have it. 10 hidden Northern California retirement havens you've probably never heard of. From the foggy, mystical streets of Mount Shasta City to the gritty, irresistible charm of Eureka, these towns prove one thing. California doesn't have to bankrupt you to give you beauty, peace, and just a little weirdness. Of course, every town has trade-offs. Isolation comes with silence, forests come with mosquitoes that seem unionized, and the ocean comes with moods darker than your in-laws' sense of humor. But for the right retiree, these quirks aren't flaws. They're part of the charm. The kind of charm you can't replicate with gated communities or overpriced condos in Southern California. If there's one takeaway, it's this: you don't have to follow the herd. You don't have to settle for traffic, overpriced coffee, and generic sunsets. There are places where affordability, scenery, and community collide in ways that feel almost accidental, and that's exactly what makes them worth discovering. Hit that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment with the town that surprised you the most. And stay tuned, because in the next video, we're going even deeper into places even locals avoid, where California gets dark, mysterious, and deliciously off the map. After all, retirement doesn't have to be boring.